These three characters are considered the strongest in their story, but the best thing the author has done for them is remove them entirely. Got rid of them, chucked them out for good, and for a very important reason. So I am trying to hit 200,000 subscribers before the end of the year. If you want to help me get there, consider subscribing. And if you enjoy the video or find yourself coming back on the regular, leave a like. I appreciate it immensely. At the beginning of the week, I talked about bringing weak characters up to these characters' levels, the strongest. And if you're doing that, you eventually may have to move the strongest characters out of the story. The weak to strong is your natural story progression, and you will want to progress past these strongest characters that already exist, like Gojo and Arima, for example. But why is it important to get rid of them? Why can't you have these pillars of power just sit within your story? There is a very good reason for this, and all three of them represented in different ways. The strongest concept can be utilized in a lot of different ways. A common way that it is used is in regard to power. They uphold the world and they provide balance. So what this is doing for us as readers is giving us the knowledge, the understanding that these people are considered the top. They are the ceiling of power. And as long as they're in the story, potentially no other character will go past them. This creates a nice line of progression for you. If a character is the weakest, then you know where exactly they kind of have to end up. And there will be checkpoints within the story for those characters to reach where they need to go. Because these characters are strong, they're also very problematic. And they're more problematic than being the strongest, because while they are the strongest, they also start to cause a lot of issues. Why aren't they helping out? Why are they within the background? Why are they away from the story so often? Why don't we see them more often? Why can't they help the main cast of characters take out big threats? If your story rotates around powerful characters and that line of progression, then logically you end up thinking about the strongest people in the story. Who's the strongest and why aren't they actually here helping out? It's funny when you think about it, right? But then it starts to get a little bit more logical and you're like, narratively, it wouldn't make sense for these strong characters to come in and steal all the spotlight. They easily could. They could get rid of these threats, right? But they can't. It's for your main cast of characters to figure out so they can progress and grow. So they become problematic. You have to figure out ways to keep them out the story for as long as possible. That is believable. Either they're doing something else, either they're handling a bigger threat, either they're just in the background or busy with political work that you don't know about, or they're more mysterious. And each one of these characters, being the strongest but also the most problematic, are handled very differently. Batista is a character from Chojin X. He is considered one of the main villains of the story, and funny enough, he's not actually the strongest. He does definitely become that, but he is more stealthy. He's sneaky. And the way the author hides Batista within the story is by having him be one, very unpredictable, and two, very mysterious. You don't know his goals. You don't know what he's trying to do. You don't really understand what's going on. While he does kickstart the beginning of Chojin X's story, and then you see the experimentation process, so you get a bit of a gist of what he's trying to do, you don't get the full picture right towards the end of his character arc, which is where he skyrockets into the strongest. He is the equivalent of planting seeds. Throughout the entirety of Chojin X, he is planting seeds within the background that the main cast of characters come to operate around. And because of that, his problem meter starts to trickle more and more. He doesn't have a maxed out bar, but it's little. But the more he influences the story, the more he plants those seeds, but the more that problem meter starts to get bigger. It's not towards the end of his character when he actually kind of upholds the villain role. You learn about his backstory, you see what type of power he actually has, and then he is 100% a problem. And you have to get him out. There's no real way to keep him within the story with the type of power that he has because he's lost control. And then he turns into this concept reality warping being. You have to get rid of him. He is too strong, he is too uncontrollable, he has to go. That is a logical sense, a logical outcome, a logical path of progression. He becomes a hurdle, he's slowly built up within the background, appears here and there, and then he becomes the final gate that the main cast of characters have to overcome so the author can get rid of him entirely. Not a lot of stories tend to do this though. It's more specific to Ishida's style. Gojo, for example, is not that. He starts off the story with a problem meter already maxed out. He is a problem from the first moment you meet him because he is established to be the most powerful person in the story. So he's a problem. And eventually the author will have to get him out, and you will see that in more ways than one. The author of Kaizen though is incredibly smart with how he utilizes Gojo though. He may be a problem for the author to write, but he's a problem for the story itself. Other people knowing that he is the strongest keeps everyone at a level playing field. Powers will not advance or curses will not go above this level of power. And as long as he is active, as long as he is alive, as long as people know that he exists, it will continue to be that way. It's quite an interesting concept when one character upholds pretty much your entire power system in this kind of TP scalable way. You can very much see where everyone else is, and then right at the top you have Gojo and all the reasons why no one can really surpass him. Is it funny when the main cast of characters get into problems and situations and Gojo isn't there to clean it up or to help out? Of course, and this is why he's a problem. Realistically, Gojo could handle any threat within Kaizen's story. He could solve every single problem. He could do pretty much everything. So there's got to be ways for the author to take him out of the story in a believable way. And there's only so much that you can kind of feign ignorance, such as being quote unquote busy or away or doing something else entirely. So the funniest thing that the author does is put him in a box, quite literally seals him away for the majority of the story. This does two things. One, this completely frees the author from the power system that he has, and two, gets rid of the problem entirely. He no longer has to tiptoe around writing this character on what they're actually doing or why aren't they helping or this or that. Instead, he can now write freely with the main cast of characters because they are experienced enough. So it completely recontextualizes and reshapes the entirety of Kaizen's story, and arguably its most interesting plot point and world development. What does a world within Jujutsu Kaisen look like without the strongest being in it or influencing it? That is the most critical moment for me of Kaizen's storytelling, and why just removing Gojo, sealing him away, is one of the most powerful things that the author has done. But he doesn't finish it there. He actually capitalizes on that ceiling because he quite easily could have had him not come back out. But he does, and he turns it into a massive event. A moment that is equally just as critical, that doesn't reshape the story of Kaizen because it's going towards its ending, but instead instantly puts him against the other strongest character within the story, someone that is now of his equal, Sukuna. And you can argue that you get one of the best fights in the story between them, and then eventually everybody else trying to reach the scale of what Gojo is to take out Sukuna in the end. It's a really smart way to kind of combine a final fight that way, and while there is a lot of jank in there for narrative reasons, it all smooths itself out regardless. It's entertaining, it's enjoyable, and it's a great way to remove your problematic characters because they're a little bit too strong. And a great way to reintroduce them to capitalize on their presence and their power once more, before we send off the entire story into the final chapter. Arima is similar, but is not that. I would say Arima blends both the design of Gojo and the design of Batista within the story of Tokyo Ghoul. So Arima is incredibly passive throughout a majority of Tokyo Ghoul and Tokyo Ghoul's story, and he is the strongest. You see it quite often. He does not struggle with anybody. You get a lot of context for his character as well, but Ishida does a lot to just completely avoid him entirely. While he is technically a main threat, a problem to the main cast of characters and the world of ghouls in general, you just don't see him. You don't even think about him. There is partially a reason why it's more believable with Arima, even though he is so incredibly powerful, is that he is kind of technically just viewed as being human. And while we know that isn't entirely true, the perception of his strongest is incredibly limited. For example, Gojo is the opposite. He is the kind of peak embodiment of what the strongest character is, and you know that very early on, 100% factual. Arima, you only know it because people speak about it. You don't actually see him do a lot of stuff, and even if he does fight people, it's either skipped over, cut through, or he just one-shots them. So you never really know where he sits other than just the fact that he is the strongest. You don't get it as this big showcase or this big pillar that he's actually upholding. Funny enough, it's not really the power that he's upholding, even though he is the strongest. He's actually holding a title that is political, one that has been kind of forced upon him by accident and will have to eventually give out, which will completely reshape the landscape of the world that he resides in. And because we perceive him as being human, you don't really know what that actually means. That is, until it is necessary. A cool way that Arima is used for Tokyo Ghoul is one at the end of Tokyo Ghoul Part 1, where he goes up against the main character of the story, Kaneki, and just kills him. It is such a curveball of an idea. One, because you didn't know that Tokyo Ghoul Part 2 or Re was coming, and two, you don't expect the main character to die. No one knew this was even the end of the story. It kind of just happened and then it stopped. And it was a really big shock. Kaneki was spiraling out of control and getting very strong very rapidly, but Arima was not breaking a sweat. Kaneki was not at the level that Arima wanted him to be, so he took him out. And that direct interaction actually leads to Part 2. Now, Arima is more present in Part 2, but in a more humanized way. He's not really used as the strongest as he was within Part 1. Instead, he's more considered a father figure. You get a lot more development from him, you get a backstory from him, you get way more humanization of his character, and he's someone that rarely shows emotion. And who is he showing it to? None other than the person that he originally killed, Kaneki. There is a good reason why he's doing this though. While his feelings are real and incredibly valid, he's also pushing Kaneki down a path to eventually inherit a title that he currently upholds. A kind of pseudo the strongest title, but more so a political one known as the One-Eyed King. Because so many people fear Arima, because they consider him so strong and powerful, they have dubbed him the One-Eyed King. But if people know that Arima is no more, then that title can be transferred to the one that actually kills him. So in a simple way, Arima quite literally trains Kaneki to eventually kill him, so he can inherit the title and control the fate of the world. But what you get is an incredibly sad fight between a father and a son. And it gets to a point where while Kaneki is exceptional in here and grows so tremendously because of Arima's training and reaches a point that Arima is comfortable with, he does not actually want his son to go through the pain of killing him. Instead, Arima takes himself out, happy with the decision to give that title to him and to not burden him with the physicality of killing your own father. While this is still incredibly traumatizing for Kaneki, obviously watching his father die in front of his eyes, a person that he's come to love over these years and to train him and mold him, it's also a reflection of Arima's mental state. When Arima originally killed Kaneki at the end of Tokyo Ghoul, something that Kaneki done when he was out of control was kill his friend, Hide. For Arima to avoid this type of mental state, he knew that Kaneki could not be the one to actually kill him. Instead, you would falsely bring him to this level, like they were fighting to the death, knowing that Kaneki would be able to take it, but also convincing him that it had to be done. But instead of giving him that final result, that traumatizing experience like the past, and potentially him going out of control again, Arima takes his own life. It is very emotional, it is incredibly poetic, and it is beautifully handled. I love how all three of these characters are handled. I love how they're exited from the story. I love how frustrating sometimes the author gets in writing these characters. You don't really notice it when you're reading it because you're dealing with so much other stuff, but if you just isolate the character themselves, it's quite funny to think about how kind of vague a lot of these characters are because they're so influential that they're just out of the story for such long periods of time because that's necessary. And you'll never really get a proper explanation for it, and that's okay. It's all about figuring out when to throw away the problem.